What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 227 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I have one more autobiographical comic book to talk to you about, and that is Maus by Art Spiegelman. Specifically, this is Maus Part 1. There are 2 volumes, and I only have the first volume. This is something that we talked about in my graphic novel class that I took in 2009. This is a very interesting book. This is something that is known by people who don't even know anything about comic books. People who don't know the difference between Superman and Spider-Man, they know about Maus. I'm pretty sure my mom knew about this book before I did. It's a very well-known book outside of comic book reading circles, and rightly so. This is a book that precedes almost all of the other autobiographical books that I've talked about so far. This started coming out sometime in the 80s. It didn't finish until, I think, 1991. So I don't know if this came out in segments or if it came out in the collected volumes like what I have here, because it's divided up into chapters. And I know that Art Spiegelman, he has done a lot of work on underground comic book magazines, and there's one particular story that he did sometime in the 1970s that's actually collected here, but I know that he's done work like that, so I'm not sure if Maus was printed in chapter format in a magazine and then later collected in a book like this. I don't know. But anyway, this story is about Art Spiegelman's father, Vladek, I think I pronounced that correctly, and how he met his wife, Art Spiegelman's mother, and then how they survived the Holocaust. Art Spiegelman's parents were both at Auschwitz, and they survived, and then it's basically how this affected their life, and then how eventually Vladek's wife committed suicide, and how that kind of drove a wedge between him and his son. It's a very, very personal book. I would say even more so than any of the other autobiographical things that I've talked about so far, and I've been very fascinated with each of these autobiographies about how personal they are, and at times how very harsh and savage they are. In this particular book, there's at one point where Art Spiegelman is just laying into his father because he got rid of his wife's journals that she kept. And Art Spiegelman, he felt like he needed those in order to do this story, Maus, but also I feel like to get to know his mom a little bit better. And we get this feeling in this book that he has this sensation of guilt because he wasn't very nice to his mom the last time that they spoke, right before she killed herself. And it's very personal. And once again, I find myself wondering, would Art Spiegelman have been this brutally honest if his father was still alive when this came out? Because his dad died in 1982, and he must have started research on this a few years before his dad died. I don't know how he finished the book, because the final product of this didn't come out until 1992, which was 10 years after his dad died. But the framing device of this story is him talking to his father. So I don't know how much research he completed before his dad died. I don't know if he incorporated his father's death into the second half of the book. It's possible that Spiegelman would have been as brutally honest even if his father was still alive when this came out, because that's a little bit of a plot point. At one point, his dad discovers this underground comic that Art had done when he was in college called Prisoner from the Hell Planet, and that is basically about Art's feelings when his mom committed suicide, and how he felt like it was his fault, and how everyone was kind of treating him very strangely, he felt. It's a very personal, very brutally honest story as well, a lot like Maus is. So it's possible that this story would not have been any different even if his father was still alive when the final product came out. But that's just something that I like to wonder about. I'm a little bit morbidly curious about. It doesn't really matter, I don't think. But this story is very good. It's something that at times it's very adult, and then at times it's something that I think you should give it to a 12 or 13-year-old. Whenever you've got a kid who is reading the diary of Anne Frank and they're learning about the horrors of the Holocaust, I think that this is a book that you should give them right along with that. At times, you might have to sit down and explain to them, okay, this is what this is about, this is what this means, and stuff like that. At times, it's got some words that you might not want your kid to know if they're a 12 or 13-year-old, but if they are old enough to be learning about all the tragedies of World War II and the Holocaust, then they're probably old enough and mature enough to know, okay, this is something that this guy says in this situation because he's really angry, or whatever. This book does end on a huge cliffhanger. Since since the meat of this book is about Art's relationship with his father and his not finished relationship with his mother, this book ends on a gigantic cliffhanger. I won't explain what it is, but it is something that thematically I'm very curious about, and I've never gotten around to finding Maus Volume 2 or buying it. I guess I could just buy it online, and I've just never gotten around to doing that. But it is something that I feel like is a very interesting question. I'm very curious about how his relationship with his father ended up, especially when you read the last page of this book. Anyway, I don't have a whole lot else to say about this book. It's a very interesting story. I like it quite a bit. A lot like some of these other autobiography comics, it's not something that I would go back to again and again and again because, like I've said, I like to enjoy the books and the movies that I watch, so it's not something that I'm just going to take off the shelf one day and kill an afternoon reading. But it is a very important book historically and also personally for Art Spiegelman. It's a very important book about him and his relationships. So I like this book quite a bit, and if you like these autobiographical comics that I've been talking about lately, then I would recommend that you buy this. I think that this is one of the most important ones that you could find, if anything, because it's a very big predecessor to all the others that I've talked about. I'm not sure if we would have Persepolis or Fun Home or Epileptic if we didn't have Maus that came before. So those are my thoughts on this book. I hope that you guys like this review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.